I'm back. Dave came over last weekend and we did a little bit of the wiring work. You may remember that in my last video we had her started, which was awesome. But we had some concerns about the wiring inside. It was clearly work done by a farmer, my grandfather, in the middle of Wisconsin in the 1970s. And there were some creative choices, but I will say it got him on the road for 15, 20 years before he sold the car to my dad. So it worked, but not the safest thing in the world. So we changed that out. So in my last video I think I mentioned at the very end as an offhand thing that the brakes weren't great. The problem was that when Dave put his foot on the brake pedal, you were almost to the floor of the car before the brakes engaged. And clearly you want the brakes to engage way before then. The adjustment that he told me about is, I'm going to show you how we did it on the front wheel here. It's an adjustment that pushes apart the brake pads or the brake shoes so that you've got the wheel here and you've got the brake pad here, and you'll spread it apart so that it gets closer to the wheel, and that means that the brakes will engage a lot sooner. This is not a permanent fix. This is something that will get me through the driving season, and then this fall and winter I will be taking apart the brakes completely and seeing what's good and what's bad and what needs to be replaced, what needs a little work. And so hopefully next year I will have fresh, happy brakes that aren't, I don't want to say jury-rigged because this is actually a decent fix and it's a well-known fix, but it's not a permanent fix. So the first thing to do is to jack up the car a little bit. And I'm under here to kind of show where the safe point to do that is. I specifically asked Dave. So you can see we've got the radiator here. And right down from the radiator, we've got, not easy to do, an axle piece. And that's where it's safe to put the jack. Okay, so let's jack it up. Let me get this under here and get it positioned. One tip that Dave had given me, he uses a little shred of carpet to protect the metal-on-metal connections to the jack and the vehicle. So I don't have any shards of carpet. I'm going to try an old towel. I need to get this high enough that I can see if it's positioned correctly. It needs to be back. Now for the brake adjustment we're doing, the car just needs to be off, the tires just need to be off the ground a bit. So we don't need to jack it up super high. I need to be able to spin the wheels freely. So I'm going to jack it up to here. Now remember, never ever trust your car to just a jack. You need to put jack stands under there, or you could get crushed. So I've adjusted my one jack stand to just about the right height. I want to make sure the other one is at the same height. Now I'm going to use the same protection over here. Oh, I need to check it just a little bit more. Okay. And then one under the other side. Okay, and now that I have the jack stands under there, I'm going to let the jack down, hopefully slowly, so that my car is then supported completely on the jack stands and not on the jack. And then we're ready to try and adjust the brakes. So now that the car's jacked up, what you want to do is spin the wheel. And Dave and I have already adjusted the brake, so there's some resistance there, but before we started, you could spin this wheel and it would just keep spinning. One thing you want to note when you're spinning this, you want to spin it in the direction it would be spinning if the car was going. So on the other side, I'd spin it toward the front of the car again, even though it would then be spinning in the opposite direction. In order to get that extra resistance, you need to adjust. There's a square nut right here. Now Dave had a special square wrench for it, but he said any standard size wrench would fit. So what you do is you end up turning that, it's a little wedge-like thing, and it drives the brake shoes apart so that they then catch against the wheel more. And as you can see, now when I'm spinning it, it doesn't spin much before it stops. It gets a lot of resistance there. Now we did it for all 4 tires. Right now I just have the front jacked up, but Dave and I had the front and back jacked up when we were doing the adjustments. I wanted to point out something. We're now in the rear of the car. I have a spare on the rear. And I wanted to show the safe places to jack up. Here is this piece. The one thing you need to look out for when placing the jack is to not hit this guy. That's an adjusting nut that you don't want to hit. Always make sure that your hydraulic jack vent is closed all the way. Not only will you have trouble jacking it up, but if it's part way, you might lose pressure once it's up there. Right here would be a good spot. I'm not gonna jack her up right now, but see, I'm avoiding that nut. Another thing I'll point out while I'm back here is that on these tires, that adjusting nut is not on the top like it was on the front, but it's right here. It's the same shape, so it's hopefully obvious what it is if you get back here and wonder what you're doing, and it serves the exact same purpose. As you can see, the adjustment is actually fairly simple. I probably could have done this on my own, but it was really nice to have Dave here to show me exactly what I was doing, and I feel if I ever needed to do this again, I could certainly do it. And the good news is that now when you press on the brake pedal, the brake engages almost instantly, and so I'll have a lot more confidence on the road that when I'm hitting the brake, I'm actually hitting the brake.